Hey everyone, welcome to another Coffee and Critique screencast, where I choose a couple of photos from this past week's album with a cup of coffee in hand and drop some thoughts, some opinions. But before we do that, we got a long list of new Patreon supporters to the project. Right now we have 134 patrons contributing around $220 for each weekly album, which is an incredible support from the community to help make this project run and to really allow our plan of taking this project and creating our own custom website possible. And you too can become a patron of 52Frames for now just $1 a week. You'll get 2 great videos that I made specifically for patrons on composition and how to edit RAW. And at $2.50 a week, you get a t-shirt and so on. I just want to thank all of our patrons who have contributed or upgraded since the last screencast: Adele, Barb, Ian, Suzanne, Marissa, Robin, Aisha, Liba, Susan, Yuki, Anthony, Laurie, Rachel, Sandra, Rachel, Vicky, John, Pam, Jane, Kat, and Bonnie. You guys, thank you so much. Your support means so much. Even at just $1 a week, it's you guys that really make this community possible. Okay, let's get into it. So I pulled out first 11 photos from still the remaining people from our December Patreon giveaway. Those who upgraded or new contributors in December were guaranteed a critique in the next screencast. And if by some miracle I get through these 11, we'll go to some of the other ones that I've picked out. Leading lines is one of those rules. Well, okay, no rules. It's one of those guidelines that really affects the wow factor of a composition, and it may not be intuitive. You guys here have examples of great leading lines, and basically it's lines that come in from either the corner or the edge of a frame and just brings the viewer into the image in a very dramatic way. And it's really a great thing to think about in general when you're shooting. If you see a leading line, if you can incorporate that into your photo, it's automatically gonna up the impressive factor, the wow factor in your composition. So let's see if I can give you some more in-depth critique here. Ian, okay, so very cool. First off the bat, I see that you did the extra credit challenge of more than 10-second shutter speed. It looks like you have 13 seconds of shutter speed. It's a bit too dark. That's the first thing that I notice about the image. Very ambitious, and it's very cool. I think if you were using this method of a long shutter speed to get these light trails, then it's the light trails that really should be the leading lines. I feel like you should have been standing over here on the side of the street and had the light trails come out of the corner of your image rather than this dark banister that we can't really see so well. Even though you shot at 13-second shutter, I see that you really amped up your aperture to very small hole of f20 in order to compensate for that. It's still too dark. So either you could have gone even longer with the shutter, you could have raised your ISO, you could have lowered your f-stop, which makes a bit more sense. I can try and pull up some of these shadows, but it's just going to get gross, as you can see, because I'm not dealing with a RAW. But I think you did good by going out and trying this ambitious shot and learning from it. But just think about your fundamentals. Make sure your horizon is straight. Make sure your image is exposed properly. Even if it's a really cool technique, if the image itself is fundamentally flawed, meaning if it's flawed under some of the basic principles of photography, then the viewer will really see that first before the cool factor. And if we see here, you're very much on the low end in your histogram. So, by looking at the histogram, you can see that your image would really need to be brightened up to get a more properly exposed shot. But very cool. I hope that critique helps. Barb, also great example of a leading line. This is actually 4 leading lines. We had that as an extra credit in previous years. We see lines coming in from each corner. And it forced you to get lower. It forced you to create a more unique composition. And this is the kind of composition that really draws you in. Leading lines are so powerful. I think this is a great example of how leading lines can affect your image. If you were just standing up, you would still have a leading line, but perhaps it would just be coming out from the middle of the edge. Perhaps it wouldn't be 4 leading lines. I don't think it would be as powerful. There's a reason why this draws you in, because you have these lines coming in from every corner. No real critique here. I think you did a great job, and I hope you learned from that as well. Okay, Ruth, I'm gonna use Barb's photo as an example for my critique of your photo, and that is to get lower. It looks like you're shooting this down. It looks like you're standing straight up, and you have the leading lines coming in from the corner. This is interesting. Even though this isn't a line, I think the eye will still, the brain rather, will continue this line. You have the leading lines coming in from the bottom corners, but it lacks a bit of drama because it looks like you're standing and facing down. And if you got lower, look at the difference in perspective here. If I go back and forth, Barb is on her knees, okay, or maybe even sitting down on the snow here to get this angle. And it seems here that you didn't get low. I used to give this critique so often. Here's another one. I feel like you could have gotten lower. The lower to the ground you get, the more dramatic the leading line. I think that's a good rule of thumb to go by. If you look at these dramatic shots, you can see that it's low to the ground. And maybe I can pull up some, let's see if we can find some similar dramatic shots, and you'll see the difference between here. So this is not low to the ground, right? This is standing up. Also, very cool leading line, but it's a bit familiar, right? It's our vantage point that we're used to. Whereas this one, this camera is on the pavement, right? This camera is probably sitting in the middle of the street on the lines. That is a vantage point that we're not used to, which makes it more unique and makes it more interesting. So I like that as a rule of thumb. I'm going to go ahead and say leading lines are more dramatic when you're as low to the ground as possible. And I'm talking camera on the ground low, people, but at least start with bending those knees. All right. Photography is about exercise. So that would be my biggest critique for this. I also see you have a purplish tint and some chromatic aberration, but let's leave it at that. I think the general critique is more helpful at this point. Laura, also, I think you could have been a little bit lower. Now, not that you're that high here, but if you got lower, a nice consequence of that is that the tops of these trees wouldn't be cropped, right? Think about it. If you get lower and you tilt the camera up a little bit, then we're seeing more of the sky. In general, that's a very good compositional technique. When you're shooting and trying different angles, let's say, okay, you want the leading line on the ground, but you also want clouds. How do you get the ground and the clouds? The answer is, generally, you get lower and then you tilt the camera up. So I can keep this in the corner of my frame, but I can introduce more and more sky by getting lower and tilting the camera up. You should always think about that when you're out trying different angles. Is tilting up and down and your y-axis, if you will, your actual height to the ground, using your knees, getting lower to the ground. I don't know why I had to bring in an axis into that equation there. Could have just said bend your knees. Much simpler way of saying it. Okay, this is Robin. And Robin, I just wanted to honor your request. You unchecked the critique my photo this week in the forum. So I'm not using the photo that you submitted this week, but I still wanted to critique your photo because you were a December contributor. So I have borrowed your photo from last week because you kept that checked last week. So we can critique. This is Robin's black and white photo from last week. So don't be startled, audience, that there's no leading lines here. This is really beautiful. A lovely black and white image. I really wanted to do a critique, coffee critique for black and white. What a stunning album. But life, you know? Like everyone else, I embrace the imperfection, and believe you me, there's so much more I want to do. So I'm very grateful that I'm able to give a screencast critique this week, because this takes many, many hours to edit and upload. So, okay, back to this photo. Enough about life imperfection. The real thing that bothers me here is the noise. So if we look here, ISO 2000, what camera do you have here? I mean, that's pretty high, right? Anything over 1600 is serious noise territory. An Olympus M12, I believe, is a smaller DSLR-esque micro four thirds in between point and shoot DSLR type of camera. I'm forgetting the name of that category. And perhaps this is too much for this sensor. 2000 is too much. Looking at some of your other specs here, it looks like 6.3. So perhaps you could have lowered your aperture, and you would have also narrowed your depth of field, which would affect the composition here. So maybe you did the best you could, but I just wanted to point out that we are seeing, I'll zoom in here, some of this noise becomes very apparent when you zoom in, I think because you also applied some sharpening in post. But all these little boxes, these pixelations, if you're able to see it on your screen, is digital sensor noise. What you could do is, on any program that you're on, not any program, but the higher level programs will have a noise reduction slider. It exists in Lightroom, and what I'm using here, Adobe Camera Raw. And if we zoom in, you can definitely see a dramatic difference when I turn it off and amp it up. Amping up the noise reduction will also soften the image. So that's the pros and cons for that. But otherwise, a really, really lovely image. I really like it. Very, very clean, very interesting composition. Suzanne, I'm going to give you the same critique as Robin. I think you could have gotten lower. You are a bit low, but then there's the tilt. And it's times like this I wish I was videoing myself also. I'll get to that one day. But if you tilt it up, then we would see also more of the sky, more of the background here that's being cut off. And then the leading lines will actually lead us to the whole scene. I feel like it's leading us, but then we're cropped. So it actually makes it a bit cramped. Also, I'm not sure if your horizon is off. This line looks straight, but it doesn't so much matter if the horizon is actually straight. What's more important is that it appears straight. So I think that's a little bit better. Like, the point I'm trying to make is, to me, this looks straighter. I'm looking over here, right? So these lines actually are probably supposed to be askew because of the angle in which you were holding your camera. So keep that in mind also. You don't want to just automate the horizon straightening tool. You want to really look at it and make sure it makes sense for yourself. Okay, Louise. Really lovely complementary colors. The orange, sun glistening orange leaves with a beautiful, smooth blue bokeh background. Really, really lovely shot. I wouldn't say this is classically a leading line. You do have lines coming in from the frame. You do have it coming in from the corner. But because the perspective, right, this line is on the same plane of view, I'm going to try not to get sciencey again, as opposed to a shot like this where the line is bringing you forward in the Z dimension. Like, all you math geeks are like, oh yeah, the Z dimension, oh yeah, the Y axis, and everyone else who's not a math geek is like, I don't know what a Z dimension is. Stop talking in dimensions. So if you understand what I'm saying, I think the line will lead you in less. It's not leading you into the photograph. It doesn't mean it's not a good composition. It's a lovely photograph. I don't know if this is necessarily a leading line, but it's a beautiful example of complementary colors. It's a really nice depth of field, and I quite like it. And that's all that matters. Adele, very dramatic photo. Like we pointed out earlier, two critiques for this. One, again, I think you should tilt up. A lot of you nail the leading lines here on the ground, but you're not paying attention to, first of all, your horizon. Okay, I'll double click this. It should auto, maybe it's my eye. That to me is straight. Your horizon seemed askew to me, in my humble opinion. Your highlights also are a bit too crunched. You can maybe lower that to get some of that sky back. But more importantly, your trees are cropped off. So again, low, I don't know if you can get lower than this. So at this point, I would tilt up even just a bit and I would get more of the scene. I feel like the lines are leading me in, but there's a gate here. It looks like a site that's closed off to visitors. So psychologically, if you follow through with the composition of this image, it's a little bit confusing to the viewer. And I think maybe if you tilt it up and we had more open sky, we would have a bit more of that free feeling in the photo itself. Aisha, very cool photo. Something about this seems unnatural, and I don't know if that's actually the case. Like, this could be melted ice, this could be morning fog, and this could be shallow depth of field, and this could be storm clouds. So I don't want to speak out of turn, but I feel like this was processed in a way that, this looks authentic over here, and then it looks kind of mushy. Clouds are lacking all kinds of detail. It looks like a painting. And it's quite nice. And if this was actually reality, then I stand corrected, and it's quite beautiful. I mean, it's a really abstract scene. But for me, to my eye, sometimes, you capture such an unnatural view that people look at it and they're like, oh, it's photoshopped. When it's actually just an amazing, unique perspective of something that people don't ordinarily see. So I'm not gonna critique this very strongly, in the event that there's some alternate facts happening here. But I do think it's a lovely image. I do think it's a very interesting image, and it's most definitely a leading line. And this is what's cool. I think this may be a good photo to point out. You're probably thinking of this ice or water, whatever this is, coming in from the bottom left. But the bottom right, although not as visually obvious, sorry, I just hit the microphone, is also a leading line, because there is a natural line that's being created here from the corner that's bringing you into the image. That's very much a leading line, even though it doesn't look visually like a normal straight line that we would be used to. Okay, we got two more, and then I think we can wrap it up. I think it'll be a good length for this critique. Jennifer. So this is also very interesting composition. And I actually have the opposite critique that I've been giving everyone else. Here, you're tilted up. You got the tilt up, down. I hope that confused everyone. But in this respect, where you're cutting off the ground, we're actually cropping off the ground, as opposed to some of the other ones here. We have the trees cropped off, right? Tree cropped off, tree cropped off. No sky. A bunch of you did that here. And here we have some sky, and your ground is cropped off. So I would tilt down. It's sometimes you can't have everything. I understand what you want. You have these awesome lamppost things that are forming a beautiful line. We have this beautiful perspective that you have. Very cool design. And if you tilt it down, which I'm sure you started with, then you're missing that with the lens that you have, right? What lens do you have here? iPhone. Okay, you're shooting on an iPhone, so you can't really zoom in and out. You should not be zooming, by the way, on a phone that doesn't have an optical zoom, meaning a lens that zooms, because you're just electronically zooming. You're just cropping it in, which you could do in post anyways. So for whatever reason, I imagine this was the only angle you can get while getting these cool things. But unfortunately, you can't have it both ways. And I think having the ground is more important, even if you were cropping the sky at the risk of losing your leading lines. But at the bottom of these pillars here, you would also have some leading lines. So that is my critique for this It is a bit on the dark side, just so you know. If you look at the histogram here, it looks like a perfectly exposed image. You have the mountain right in the middle, just like you want. But because it was such a sunny day, and because these pillars are probably not gray, they're probably white, and your computer or your camera wants to make it gray for reasons I won't get into right now. But just know that by eyesight, it was a bit too dark. And just like by amping up some of the exposure here, we can see more what it looked like. And I think that's a more interesting image. So just keep a lookout for that in some of your other photographs. And last but not least, Susan. Dear Yosef, thank you for the gift of 52 frames. This project has been a wonderful and challenging adventure. Fondly, Susan. And we know she took it this week because she dated the letter. I gotta talk to the committee. I don't know how this should have been cover. Susan, why was this not a cover photo? Susan, thank you so much for the warm words. It's a really lovely photo, and it really is lovely. This absolutely warms my heart, and I think we'll find out if I actually edit the way you're seeing it, that I'm gonna handwrite the Patreon names in the beginning. We'll see if I actually do that. But it's a really lovely photo, very real life. Let me see if I can give you a critique as well. First off, your noise is quite apparent. I'm looking at ISO 6400 on a Canon 7D Mark II. Okay, so 7D Mark II has a phenomenal lens and a sensor rather, and you can probably shoot at 3200, 1600 easily. 6400 is that's a bit crazy. So I would at that point introduce more light. I see 7.1. Are you shooting with a macro lens? 18 to 135. Okay, interesting. So you wanted this depth of field. Any shallower depth of field and we wouldn't be able to make out the words here. So that's fair. So you needed this at 7.1. 1/125, your shutter is about as low as you would want to go, so you're right on that. So I see why you went to 6400, which brings me back to my critique. At that point, you want to introduce more light. The camera won't be able to keep up. So that would be my critique for this, to lessen some of that noise. And also, as far as leading lines, the lines do come from the corner of the page, but it's could be stronger. Perhaps if you were even closer, like right on the page like this, and we saw lines coming out like that, that would be more of a leading line, but obviously we wouldn't be able to read your letter. So I get why you took it, and I really do appreciate it. You guys, thank you so much, December supporters, but this is not just for Patreon contributors. I give these coffee and critiques whenever I have the opportunity to. This was just a special shout out to the giveaway that we offered in December. Thank you so much to everyone in the community for submitting your challenge every week. Thank you so much for all the personal emails and letters that you guys send. It's an absolute life changer to be able to share this amazing journey with all of you guys. Keep up the work. As much as the world and your own brain tries to distract you, it is our job as a 52 Frames community member to pick up a camera every week, carve out a slice of time in your life to create something, to have some me time, to get better at something, and to look at the world differently. Until next time, everyone, happy shooting. Hi, my name is Yosef Adest, and I started 52 Frames back in 2011 as a personal passion project of mine for me and my friends to get better at photography through a guided weekly photo challenge. Little did I realize at just how much this would impact thousands of people from all over the world, literally changing the way they perceive their world. I can't count how many letters of gratitude I've received from people in the project, thanking me for all that the project has done for them and for enabling a creative space in their otherwise busy lives. For 2016, I'd like to take this project to the next level. I have spent countless hours and my own money over the last 5 years in making this project something really special, which is why I'm now coming to you for support. I'd like to invite you to become a patron of 52 Frames. In order to keep this project running, from server costs, the emails I send out, the forms we use, it costs me hundreds of dollars every month. But for this year and beyond, I want to do even more. For those of you that know me, know that video is my passion. And I really want to devote more time to creating fun, educational, dynamic video that will help you, the photographer, become better at your craft. Becoming a patron is very simple. All you need to do is pledge any dollar amount each month, and you will have full access to the 52 Frames Patreon page, as well as your personal footing in making this project become something truly special. In addition to that, I have some exciting stretch goals, and that's to hire developers to build a fully functional website, to host our rather large albums off of Facebook, and introduce great functionality like follow, sort, and filter, not to mention the sponsorships and prizes we can give out with a proper budget. 52 Frames is and always will be free to participate. Please help me in continuing to offer this project to creatives around the world. Thank you so much for being a patron. Whether it's $1 a week, $1 a month, or just helping to spread out this message, I so much appreciate you helping and fulfilling my vision and spreading joy and creativity to the world.